2026 World Cup Final, The Untold Story of Ferran Torres, AI, Part 2. The afternoon Mediterranean sun beats down hard against the heavy blackout curtains of the Ibiza hotel suite, sealing the room in a cool, artificial twilight. On the nightstand, beside a half-empty bottle of water and a throbbing pulse of exhaustion, a phone begins to vibrate violently against the wood. The screen flashes with a jarring international prefix. In the king-sized bed, Ferran Torres groans, burying his face deeper into the pillows. His head feels like it's being split open by a matching set of clashing cymbals, a direct, punishing souvenir from the VIP section at Ushuaïa just hours earlier, where he and Ilia Topuria had been chest-deep in a haze of confetti, strobe lights, and relentless basslines celebrating the pinnacle of Spanish athletics. Maldita sea, Ferran mumbles into the sheets, his voice raspy and completely drained. He squeezes his eyes shut, trying to block out both the relentless ringing and the lingering memory of the crowd chanting his name in Madrid. Around him, the quiet suite holds the unmistakable debris of a week-long bender. Scattered designer clothes, a forgotten championship medal on the desk, and the infamous red cap tossed carelessly over a chair in the corner. The phone stops for a second, plunging the room back into silence, only to start vibrating again with even more urgency. With a slow, agonizing groan, Ferran rolls over, blindly fumbles across the mattress, and finally swipes the screen to his ear. "Diga?" he mutters, his voice heavy with sleep and pure hangover regret. "Ferran Torres?" The crisp, unmistakable cadence of Caitlin Collins cuts sharply through the static and his morning fog. Ferran blinks hard against the dark, trying to force his brain to connect the dots between a pounding Ibiza hangover and the chief White House correspondent of CNN. His grip on the phone tightens slightly as the name registers. "Sí, speaking." Ferran replies, his voice cracking slightly. He runs a hand over his face, still trying to process if this is some cruel, sleep-deprived hallucination left over from the Ushuaïa VIP booth. "Ferran, I apologize for waking you, but this is urgent," Collins says, wasting zero time on pleasantries. "We need you to catch the next available flight out of Ibiza and fly back to New York immediately. There is a situation developing regarding the broadcast fallout and your recent statements that requires your direct address, and it's something we cannot discuss over an unsecured line." Across the bed, a sleepy, muscular arm shifts as Ilia Topuria stirs from the commotion, muttering a low Spanish curse into the pillows before pulling the duvet back over his head to block out the noise. Ferran stares blankly at the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead, the reality of the situation crashing down faster than any post-party come-down. "New York? Right now?" Ferran asks, rubbing his temples where a fresh spike of pain just hit. "Look, Caitlin, I literally just got to bed a few hours ago. What are you even talking about?" "Just get to the tarmac." "Ferran," Collins presses, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Trust me. You're going to want to be in the studio for this before the narrative writes itself." The studio lights of CNN hum softly as the camera cuts live. Across the screen, the chyron reads, "Torres breaks silence. World Cup hero addresses viral cap controversy." Caitlin Collins leans forward, her expression sharp, balancing the weight of a global news cycle with the sheer absurdity of what she's about to ask. "Ferran, so sorry about losing the World Cup title after VAR, but I have to ask you about the images coming out of the Madrid parade," Collins begins, her tone poised. "You were spotted wearing a red cap that read, 'Make Spain Great Again,' a direct adaptation of the US political slogan. People all over the world, including the White House, took notice. What were you thinking in that moment?" On the monitor, Ferran Torres, sitting down for his high-profile US media tour, cracks a slight, knowing smile and shakes his head. "See, it was funny because it had nothing to do with politics," Torres responds, looking directly into the camera. "Honestly, I don't know anything about politics. It was just about seeing Spain back on top, wishing to win the World Cup." He chuckles, leaning back in his chair as the internet back home lights up all over again. "It was just a fun moment to celebrate with my friends, my family, and the whole country after everything we could have achieved," Torres adds. "No hidden messages, just pure hope for our team." With those words, the surreal saga of the cap is finally put to rest, even if the internet will likely talk about it for 100 years. They have a good laugh together. The studio laughter fades quickly. swallowed by the heavy, acoustic-tiled silence of the CNN broadcast booth. Caitlin Collins sets her glass down on the glass-aligned desk with a soft, deliberate click. The easy, conversational smirk she wore a moment before vanishes entirely, replaced by an expression of cold, calculated gravity. She folds her hands on the desk, leaning in just an inch closer to the microphone. Ferran, who had been relaxing back into his chair and basking in the relief of putting the cap controversy to bed, freezes. The sudden drop in temperature inside the studio is palpable. He looks at Collins, waiting for the punchline, but her eyes remain completely unreadable. "Do you know you could have genuinely won the World Cup this year?" Collins asks, her voice dropping an octave, steady and piercing. The studio cameras adjust, tightening the shot sharply onto Ferran's face as the implication hangs heavy in the air. Ferran's smile dissolves completely. He blinks, leaning forward with a furrowed brow, the lingering effects of the Ibiza hangover instantly evaporating under a sudden wave of confusion and adrenaline. "What are you talking about, Caitlin?" Ferran asks, his voice cutting through the quiet studio. "We lost it on that final VAR call against Argentina. We didn't win." Collins doesn't blink. She holds his gaze, a slow, grim shadow of a smile touching the corner of her lips, not of humor, but of someone about to drop an anvil. "That's what the official scoreboards and the referees in Zurich wanted the world to see," Collins says softly. "And that's what everyone accepted after the review. But nobody has looked closely enough at the emergency data logs, the closed-door appeals filed by the Federation, or what actually happened in the server rooms during those 4 minutes of stoppage time." Spilling open a pristine manila folder across the desk, she slides it toward him. "Open it," Collins instructs quietly. "Because the match outcome everyone cried over? It might not be the final word at all." The heavy studio lights seem to press down on them as Ferran stares at the papers inside the manila folder, the stark realization dawning on him. Caitlin holds his gaze, letting the explosive details sink in before continuing her explanation for the cameras, her voice cutting through the tension. "It wasn't just a routine VAR review, Ferran," Caitlin says, leaning forward over the desk. "The documents from the whistleblower prove that the intervention bypassed the pitch entirely. Donald Trump made a direct emergency call to FIFA leadership while the match was still live. He didn't care about the protocol, and he didn't care about the rules of the game." She gestures toward the documents resting between them. "His rationale was entirely ego-driven. He told them flat out that he didn't know who you were and that only Lionel Messi belonged on that pedestal. He demanded the goal be wiped off the board, and the system caved to the pressure." Ferran's jaw tightens as he looks up from the files, the sheer audacity of the revelation hitting him. "And the most shocking part," Caitlin adds, her tone turning sharp and incredulous, "is that he didn't even try to hide it. In a stunning display of total impunity, he publicly confirmed the interference almost immediately afterward, doubling down on the exact same logic, telling the world that an unknown player had no business deciding a World Cup final." Ferran's hands are shaking as he stares down at the pages, the stark text and official letterheads blurring slightly beneath his gaze. He looks back up at Caitlin, his voice trembling with a mix of disbelief, shock, and mounting fury. "What? What are you talking about?" Ferran demands, his fingers gripping the edge of the desk. "Is this true?" Caitlin maintains her steady, unyielding gaze, leaning over the desk as the studio monitor catches the raw emotion etched across Ferran's face. "Every single word of it is verified." Caitlin replies, her voice ringing clear and authoritative through the microphones. "The logs don't lie, and the whistleblower is protected. The question now isn't whether it happened, Ferran." She pauses, letting the weight of the moment settle over the global broadcast before delivering the final blow. "The question is, what is the world going to do about it now that you know the truth?"